Picture this. You're sitting in a crowded coffee shop, totally minding your own business, just staring down at your laptop. Or, maybe you're walking down a quiet street right at dusk. Out of nowhere, you get this prickling sensation on the back of your neck. You can actually feel a gaze burning right into you. You haven't heard a single sound, you haven't seen anyone move, but you just absolutely know you're being watched. So you turn around, and sure enough, someone across the room quickly averts their eyes. You caught them. Look, we've almost all been there, and it feels incredibly uncanny, right? Almost like some kind of superpower. But what is actually happening in that exact moment?
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring the anatomy of a mystery, the science of scopesthesia.
Okay, let's dive straight into this. This phenomenon actually has a formal scientific name, and it's called scopesthesia. The term comes directly from the Greek words skopein, which means to look or examine, and aesthesis, which means sensation or perception. Put those together, and it is literally the sensation of being looked at. And hey, if you think you're the only one experiencing this, you are absolutely not alone. Surveys actually show that anywhere between 70 and 94% of people report having experienced this exact feeling of knowing when they're being watched. That is almost everybody. It is a nearly universal human experience.
In fact, this experience is so profound that professionals whose literal lives depend on observation swear by it. Police detectives, for instance, are explicitly trained not to stare directly at the backs of suspects they're tailing simply because the suspect might sense it and blow their cover. Military snipers, surveillance teams, hunters, they all heavily rely on this phenomenon out in the field. The early 20th century naturalist William Long perfectly captured this vibe when he wrote about sitting alone in the woods. Something is watching you. Again and again, when nothing stirred in my sight, that curious warning would come. So if this is a deeply documented, universally felt experience, the big question is, why does it exist?
Well, here's the first real plot twist of our explainer. This isn't some paranormal superpower. According to evolutionary biologists, it's actually a primal survival mechanism. Think of it as ancestral hypervigilance. Long before we were, grabbing lattes in coffee shops, our primitive ancestors were out in the wild, operating in a very high-stakes world of predator and prey. If a potential prey animal could intuitively detect the focused gaze of a hidden predator, it had a vastly better chance of escaping. This deeply ingrained alarm system was inherited right from those early ancestors. So today, we are essentially walking around with an ancient built-in threat detection radar.
And what's truly fascinating is that modern technology is proving just how deeply tied this is to our most primitive survival emotions. Recent studies using virtual reality have actually shown that our emotional states actively trigger this hypervigilance. When people navigate tense, dark, or really suspenseful VR environments, they become significantly more sensitive to external stimuli. When you're in a state of extreme tension, your brain just kicks into overdrive. It makes us way more likely to feel a phantom stare or sense an unseen enemy, especially compared to when we're just relaxed in a nice, well-lit room.
And this brilliantly illustrates why gaze detection is so incredibly critical specifically to us humans. Our eyes are completely unique in the animal kingdom. We have a really large, bright white sclera, that's the white part of the eye. This evolved because human survival fundamentally depends on social cooperation. We have to communicate silently, and we need to easily follow each other's gaze to spot danger or coordinate tasks. Now contrast that with a predator like a tiger or a wolf. They have a dark, much less visible sclera which is designed specifically to hide their gaze from prey. Because our eyes are literally built to broadcast exactly where we're looking, human gaze signaling and our ability to detect it has become a massive evolutionary asset.
So how exactly does our physical brain process all of this? Well, it turns out we have a highly specialized piece of neurological hardware dedicated entirely to this task. It's called the superior temporal sulcus, or STS for short. This specific region of the brain is hardwired to process social cues, and it fires up the very second it registers eyes pointed in our direction. But it doesn't work alone. When the STS detects a direct stare, it instantly communicates with the amygdala, which is your brain's emotional and fear processing center. This is exactly why being stared at doesn't just register as a neutral visual fact. It feels urgent, it feels emotional, and, let's be honest, sometimes deeply unsettling.
But what if the person staring is standing behind you, or they're just completely out of your direct line of sight? This is where the sheer power of peripheral vision really shines. We actually don't need to be looking directly at someone to know they're entirely focused on us. Our peripheral visual system is remarkably sensitive, especially to unnatural head or body positions. For example, if someone's body is facing away from you, but their head is turned sharply right in your direction, your peripheral vision flags that anomaly instantly. You pick up on these subconscious indirect signals right at the very fringes of your awareness, and your brain immediately translates it into that sudden, uncanny feeling of being watched.
Now, it is important to note that the scientific community is somewhat divided on the exact limits of this ability. On one side, you have parapsychological researchers, most notably biologist Rupert Sheldrake. He's actually conducted tens of thousands of staring experiments to suggest that scopesthesia might go beyond physical sight. His research proposes this could be a form of non-local perception, or telepathy, operating through an invisible field of intention he calls morphic resonance. On the other side, however, mainstream psychology offers a very different, entirely biological and cognitive explanation for these exact same experiences.
Let's look at how mainstream psychology explains this, tracing all the way back to psychologist Edward Titchener in 1898. He argued that the feeling of being stared at is actually just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Imagine the steps playing out. Step 1. You feel a random little spike of anxiety, or you hear a subtle noise in the room, so you suddenly turn around. Step 2. That sudden, jerky movement of your head instantly catches the peripheral vision of a complete stranger sitting behind you. Step 3. Their natural reflex is to immediately look directly at the source of that sudden movement, which is you. And Step 4. Your eyes meet in a moment of sheer awkwardness. You think they were staring at you the whole time, but in reality, your own movement caused them to look.
And Titchener's theory is completely supercharged by the cognitive tricks our own brains love to play on us. First off, there's confirmation bias. You vividly remember that one time you turned around and locked eyes with a stranger because, well, it validates your suspicion. But you totally forget the 99 other times you turned around and absolutely no one was looking at you. Then there's the illusion of control, where we vastly overestimate our own ability to detect hidden gazes. And finally, the availability heuristic. This bias makes rare, highly emotional coincidences, like magically catching someone's eye, feel incredibly significant and frequent, perfectly cementing our belief that we have some kind of sixth sense.
So, the real core takeaway here is that whether you're leaning more toward the mysteries of human consciousness or the strict mechanisms of evolutionary psychology, the end result is a total masterpiece of biology. Scopesthesia is just this fascinating cocktail. It's a blend of subconscious sensory cues, an ancient evolutionary gaze detection system inherited from our primitive ancestors, our highly sensitive peripheral vision, and of course, our brain's absolute love for storytelling and cognitive bias. Ultimately, your brain is a perfectly tuned survival machine, constantly scanning the environment and constructing narratives just to keep you safe.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. The next time you're sitting in a crowded room and you feel that sudden, distinct chill on the back of your neck, take a second before you turn around. Ask yourself, is someone actually burning a hole in the back of your head? Or are you about to trigger your own self-fulfilling prophecy? How much of your reality is your brain silently constructing for you right in this very moment? It's a pretty thrilling reminder of just how complex and ancient the machinery inside our heads truly is. Thanks for joining me, and keep your eyes peeled.